Welcome back to part 2 of Universal Google Analytics for product analysts. Now we're going to be going through the interface, so we'll be jumping into Google Analytics and I'll be taking you through some of my favorite reports, what you can do in GA, where to find stuff, and then we'll be recapping and going over some jargon. So now we're in Google Analytics and this is what the homepage looks like. We are in the demo account, so it's the Google Merchandise Store demo account. And when you sign up for Google Analytics, you'll automatically have access to this. So you can go in and play around. We're just going to take a quick whistle-top tour just around some of the top reports, and then we'll go into the jargon. And in a later video, we'll go through and analyze this website, the Google Merchandise Store. So the first tab we have is real-time. This is really useful for, one, making sure that you have the right number of visitors on your website at all times. If you've got targets to hit, if you know that you need 100 people on your website at all times to make your sales targets, this is a useful place to see it. It's also a great page to have up on a screen in the office so you can see what's going on. You can also see what the active pages are. And if you don't have any debugging tools, so any tools where you can have a look at tracking live, this is also an okay tool to use if you've got low traffic volumes. So you can see live where people are from. So if you're doing a sale and it only impacts like people from Spain, you could see that take effect here. You can see traffic sources. Again, if you just launched an email and you wanted to see in real time how well that was performing, you could have a look in here and see this in real time, see how many users are coming from this email. And again, with events, this is the interactions on the page. If you have this set up using additional JavaScript tags, you can see these live. So this is useful for debugging. Again, if you have low user volume on your website, if you are on the website and you're clicking around, you will see the events fire in this report, which is really useful. The next and my most used report is the audience overview. And this has a section where you can add segments. Now, segments are creating a subset of your website users. So you can define different things in there. You can say, okay, I only want to see mobile users that have spent more than 10 minutes on the website and have interacted with the image carousel. You could create that subset of users in here and you can analyze different attributes about them. So how many of them were there, how many times did they come back, how long did they spend on the website, what language do they use, and things like that. So it's really useful for if your stakeholder has a question about a subset of users, you can create it in this page here and give them that information really quickly if it loads fast. One thing I'll say about Google Analytics is if you do have a lot of data, you can be spending quite a lot of time waiting for your reports to load. So you've got a lot of interesting things in here. You have demographics, which tells you a little bit more about the users. It's based on the device. So if I'm on my dad's computer, it's not going to know that it's Chloe using this, a female from Manchester, that's aged like 30. It would see as my dad, a male who's like 60 years old or something like that. So be mindful that it's usually based on the user profile that Google has put together based on the device. We have things like geo, so this is useful for languages and locations. Again, for if you have Google Translate on your website or you do translations yourself, this is useful for making sure that everything's working as it's supposed to. Maybe Spanish isn't working very well, it's not translating very well, and this is reflected in your metrics. So you might see that a lot of people leave the website or they just don't convert very well, and you'll be able to pick that up in this report. We also have technology where you can see different browsers. Again, great for debugging your website and making sure that everything's working as it should be across all devices and across all browsers. Under mobile, you have an overview where you can see each device category, and we can see that this website mainly has people coming on a desktop device, and people don't really spend money on mobile. We can get into this even further by going into device. This only really works for mobile devices. we can see a little bit more information about which devices that people are using. And this is quite useful for diagnosing issues and pain points for the website. So say if you have a website and it's built primarily for desktop users, and you see, like we just saw in the overview, that not many people are coming on mobile, and when they do, they don't really convert very well. So you could have a look at the devices and see where the pain points are. Is it a particular screen size? Is it a particular brand? Is it a particular operating system? So that you can go back to your stakeholder and give them some recommendations. The other really useful thing in Audience is the user flow. Now be mindful that if you do have a lot of traffic on your website, this will heavily sample. If you have quite a small website or you're working for a startup, this is really useful for getting some insight. So I like to have a look at pages just to kind of get a gauge as to how users are navigating through the website. So you can start with landing page, so we can see that most people will land on the home. A lot of people might drop out here, so 30% of people that start on the home page will leave from this page. We can then also start to see like user paths. So this tells us how many sessions have done the next interaction. So we can see that 500 people will go from home to the store and then on to some other pages, and on and on and on. And you can keep adding steps until it runs out. But this is quite useful for gathering some quick insight into how users navigate your pages on your website. We'll go through some more advanced ways of gathering this information if you do have heavy sampling in your analytics profile in a later video. The next tab is acquisition, and this is all about how the user has got to your website. So we can have a look in overview and we can have a look at channels. So we usually have direct, paid search, display, affiliates, sometimes social media is in here, email. This is the default channel grouping, and I'll show you in a later video how you can alter this so that it's set up for what you need. So if your business has something quite unique, you can set these up and group all the different ways that users can get to your website in a way that's understandable for your stakeholders and for your business. In source and medium, this is the nitty-gritty of like how people get there. So we can see that most people come to the Google Merchandise Store directly, and next people come from PPC. So we can do other things like we can add device into here, we can split this to get more of an insight. So let's say our stakeholder was the PPC team and they wanted to know why their campaign wasn't working very well. So we can break this down into device, and we can see that on PPC, mobile usually gets most of the traffic. We haven't made any sales. People are spending about 5 seconds on the website. So that might tell the stakeholder that there's something wrong with this campaign. It's not quite performing as you expect. Maybe users aren't expecting the page that they're landing on. So we could also have a look at that as well. We could see landing page. So we go to the next page. Okay, so we can see that the top landing page for people coming from PPC is home. And say like in your business case that this might not be tailored to what the customers search for on Google. So if they've searched for black t-shirts and they click on a link that they think is going to take them to a black t-shirt, and they land on a homepage that doesn't show any black t-shirts on it, this might be a reason why they're only spending like 5 or 6 seconds. So this is good for some quick analysis. And again, we'll show you some deeper techniques as to how you can bring all this together to give some actionable insight to your stakeholders. Under behavior, this is one of my favorite tabs. So we're going to skip all these top ones and go straight to events and go to top events. This is where all the interactions are stored. So as we mentioned before, when you add the additional JavaScript tags, this is where you're going to see the benefit. So we have 3 different sections. We have event category, event action, and event label. And this essentially describes the user's experience on the website. So for best practice, event categories are usually what is the thing that the customer is clicking on. So in this case, it's enhanced e-commerce. The element is the e-commerce section of the website. So we click on this to drill down into event action. And just as the title suggests, action is what is it that they're doing on that component. So we can have a look at quick view click. So this is where you might have like a image of a t-shirt and then it's got a little eye for people to quickly see it and it might pop up in a new window. So let's have a look under here. So we've gone down from enhanced e-commerce as a category, event action as quick view click, and these are all the things that people have clicked on. So we can see that YouTube twill sandwich cap in black is the most clicked product on this website. This is really useful and you can build on this to suit your business needs. So going back to that image carousel example, you could add image carousel as the category, and you could add multiple actions. So you could have carousel click, carousel slice, carousel scroll, enlarge, close, all the different actions that a user could have with the element. You can add them all in here. For the labels, you could then add any additional information. So if you wanted to track what number of image the customer had clicked through to, you could get that, getting extra information as to like what the image is or bits and bobs like that. So you can add pretty much anything in here. Just make sure that you follow best practices and name it something sensible. So as your Google Analytics property grows, you can go back and understand, and other people can understand what you've done in there. In behavior as well, we also have some reports about pages. So this is useful for seeing what your top pages are, how landing pages are performing. So if you have like a website that has multiple landing pages, let's say that your marketing strategy is email and you land people on different landing pages depending on their needs, you could have a look at the performance in here. So you can see how many people are landing on these pages, what's the performance, how many sales do we get from this. So again, another really useful tab. The last one I'm going to show today is the conversions tab. We'll go under e-commerce and we can have a look at product performance. This will be a breakdown of each product on your website. So if you have like a fashion website, if you set up the tracking correctly, you'll get all the products on your website that have been sold. So just like we looked at the yellow socks and brown socks, we can have a look here and see what's going on. The great thing about Google Analytics is we can then combine different cuts of the data. So this Google Unisex Eco Tea and Black, we could then combine it with like click data to see how many people quick view this and how many purchases does this result in. So you start to build a picture of like what your users doing, what pages they're seeing, so you can inform your stakeholders how to improve their experiences. You can also find some pain points as well. Something that's just caught my eye is that the Google Mesh Blue Bag has an average quantity, so people usually buy 72, or this might be that in the 3 unique purchases, one person purchased like over 100 or something in one. So this would be something I would bring to my stakeholder and say, okay, either the tracking is wrong on here if the quantity is coming through so high, or this is a really hot product and we need to get more in our inventory. So you can do lots of cool things on here. There's some other things as well in the overview. This gives you an overview of your site's performance. So you have your e-commerce conversion rate, and we'll go through the nitty-gritty of the jargon in a second. And you can see this trended. You can change the date range, so you can have a look at this in the last week, in the last month, quarter, the year, whatever date range you want really. Just a note, if you're looking at users, you can only look in the last 90 days. For sessions, it should go back as far as you want. So here you can see how much revenue your business has made, the e-commerce conversion rate, so how many sessions have made a purchase, how many transactions, and the average order value. So it's quite useful if you don't have access to the back-end sales tool. This is really useful to have a look at. You can also add goals, so you can add funnel steps. So let's say if you have a e-commerce website, let's say the sock and shoe website, and you have a 3-step funnel checkout. So the first page is their details, the next page is their payment details, and the last page is confirmation. You could add events again, or tags, to tag each section of this page to say, when this person hits the payment details, send an event to Google Analytics so that it can tell me. And you can then do some cool analysis to say, okay, how many people get from step 1 to 2 and step 1 to 3? So again, all really useful, and we'll go through this in more depth later on. For now, let's go and have a look and bust some jargon. So now that you know what the interface looks like, let's get into the jargon. So starting with the first report that we saw, which was all about users, we're going to be looking at this first table. So users is the number of unique visitors to your website. So all these people on the screen are unique to each other, and they'll be counted as so. New visitors is the number of unique visitors that have never been to your website before. So we know that Casey is a frequent buyer of socks and shoes, so he won't be counted in this metric. Only the people highlighted who are new will be counted in this metric. Sessions is the number of times a visitor has visited your website. So this, let's take the example of Casey. Casey has came onto the website 3 times. The time that he spends on the website is called a session, and a session will end after 30 minutes of inactivity. So let's say that Casey is looking for some socks. He is on the website, then he gets distracted. He has a phone call. He's on the phone call for half an hour. The cookie that we collected will deactivate. It will kind of like turn off, it will go into the background, and it will say that Casey is no longer on this website, so the session will end. Casey finishes his phone call, he comes back onto the website, and he clicks home to go back onto the home page to do something else. This will re-trigger Google Analytics. It will send another Google Analytics event, and his session will start again. So we'll have a new session. So that might be why he might have 3. So the first one, he was already on there. He took a phone call. The session became inactive. He wiggled the mouse, refreshed the page. He started again. That kind of thing. Number of sessions per user. This is the count of total sessions, so the number of times that Casey has visited divided by users. So this is this number here divided by this number here, and this gives us an average number of times that a customer will come to the website per user. Page views is the number of pages that all of your users have seen within their sessions. So the number of, let's say, home pages, the number of stock pages, total number of pages, not unique but all together, that all your users have seen within their sessions. Pages per sessions is page views divided by sessions, and this gives you an overview of how interactive your website is to a user, how engaged a user is. So if this is a really high number, that might be good for your website. If it's a really low number, that might be bad. So, example, if you have a media website where you have articles and you want people to read many articles, or you have a funnel website where you have multiple steps where you need to get the customer from step A all the way to step E, this will be a good indicator of how well your website is performing. Average session duration is the average length of time that a user spends browsing your website during a session. So this lady here has been looking on the sock and shoe website for over an hour. She just can't decide between the yellow and brown socks. So this is within all the session counts, so this 13,000 here. How long are they spending? So their session duration. So this lady's 1 hour, Casey might be 3 hours, somebody might be 1 minute, 5 seconds. All of those aggregated up together and taken an average, and that gives us the average session duration. Bounce rate is the percentage of total sessions that visited your website that did absolutely nothing and left. So this is a great indicator of your website's performance when the customer first comes on. So it's good for looking at landing pages, having a look at PPC performance and things like that. So in this case, say Sock and Shoe had a PPC campaign, the customers clicked on it, they come onto the page, but it doesn't have any socks on there. So they're like, oh, this isn't what I wanted. So they immediately click back. that would be classed as a bounce because they've come on, they've not done anything, they've not clicked on anything, they've not interacted, they've not scrolled all the way to the bottom, they've not triggered any additional events, so they just leave, and this counts as a bounce. So if this is really, really high, this is an indicator of either page performance or the user not seeing what they expected to see when they landed on your website. Average time on page is the average time a user spends looking at a particular page. So back to Casey again, he spent 30 minutes just reading the product description of the brown socks. The picture was so bad that he had to get into the nitty-gritty of the product description to figure out what these socks are. So this again is an aggregated metric of all the users and how long on average they spend looking at a particular page. So again, going back to that example of a media website, if you had articles, this would be a great metric for you to measure. You want people to spend longer reading your articles. Unique page views is the number of times a page has been viewed by a unique user. So again, these are all aggregate. So Casey has seen this page 4 times, Chloe has seen it 7 times, but he'll only be counted once. So I've clicked on the brown socks 4 times, I'm just not sure about them. So page views would be counted as 4 for Casey, but unique page views would be counted as 1. So Casey is 1 and he's seen this page 4 times. Entrances is similar to landing page sessions. The metric should be very, very similar. And this is the number of times a user has seen a particular page when landing on your website. So again, going back to that PPC example that we had before, this is good for counting how many times somebody has landed on a particular page of your website to measure performance. Percentage exit or exit rate is the percentage of users that leave your website after seeing a particular page. So this is similar to bounce rate, but it will also include those bounces for that page. So let's take the homepage, for example. This is the number of page views, so the number of times that this page has been seen. Exits divided by that number. So we have 76,000 here and X amount of exits. Exits divided by page views gives us 17%. Next, we have page value, and this is the average value a particular page has influenced. So this is transaction value plus total goal value divided by unique page views. And this isn't very useful in my experience. If set up correctly, it can be quite useful, but to be honest, I've not really used this metric. Revenue is the total amount of money that you've made from product transactions, and depending on your implementation, this can include tax and shipping. So when you set this metric up, if you don't want to include that, you can exclude that or include that depending on your business. This is kind of like a quick overview of how much money your business has made. E-commerce conversion rate is the percentage of total sessions. So out of all these people here, how many of them or what percentage of them had a purchase for the time frame that you're looking at. So if we're looking at a week, all the people that made a purchase in the week divided by all the people that came to the website in the week. Transactions is the number of purchases that these people made. So transactions divided by sessions gives you e-commerce conversion rate. And e-commerce conversion rate is a really good metric for understanding how well your website performs. It can be quite a difficult metric to move, to increase, to decrease. It might only move like a fraction of a percentage, so bear that in mind if you use it for a KPI. It can also be quite an unstable metric. So if you have a large influx of sessions, this metric can go down quite small, like really small. It could look really bad. It could jump up and down. So while it's a very useful metric, it can be a very difficult metric to work with. So average order value is the average amount a user has paid per transaction, and you can choose the currency. So if you want it in pounds or dollars, you can change that. And this again is based on all the total amount that everybody has spent. So £20 here, £10 there, £5 there, all of that added up and divided by the number of people or the number of transactions that have been made. So let's recap over everything. We went over the Google Analytics interface. We had a look at the real-time report, and this is where you can see your traffic in real time. Again, like we mentioned before, great for flash sales and promotional days. Users and demographics is where you can understand more about your users, where they're from. Behavior is anything collected by Google Analytics that your customer clicks and sees. And remember, you need additional tracking to set this up. And e-commerce is to see your product performance, your sales and website performance. So next time we'll be going into a deep dive and trying to find some actionable insight from the Google Merchandise Store. See you soon.